Here, if you'd be so kind. Oh, and there as well. Oh, thank you. So... Yes, what is it?
Hello. I want to book a room for 2 weeks quarantine.
Well, take them upstairs.
Okay.
I don't want them here. They might be contagious. Have you got it?
Have I got it?
Yes. Have you got COVID-19, or is this just mandatory isolation?
Mandatory isolation.
Where do the nasal swabs go, Mr. Faulty?
Where do you think they go? Up your nose, you stupid girl.
I'm going to be needing room service a lot.
What?
Well, I'm in mandatory isolation. I can't leave my room, so I'll need a lot of room service.
What am I supposed to do with this, Basil?
Put it with the other one in the safe. Perhaps they'll mate. Well, I'm afraid we can't offer our usual full room service. We can only deliver the food to your door, knock, and then run away.
Mr. Faulty?
Well, I suppose that'll do, but will you at least clean the rooms?
Yes, after you've gone. Until then, you're on your own.
Mr. Faulty?
Will you be requiring sex with our security personnel?
No, thank you.
Are you sure? They're very sexy.
Mr. Faulty?
Yes, what is it now?
Is my performance racially offensive?
Only to do-gooders who think they have a right to speak on behalf of WAP waiters. Speaking of which, where are you from?
Where am I from?
Yes, presumably you've just flown in from some filthy, virus-infested hellhole, so which one is it? Brazil, China, the United States?
No, I just came in on a domestic flight from Melbourne.
Out! Get out! We don't want your sod in here!
I'll show you out the back way, sir. My moustache fell off.
I'm so sorry, he's not from Barcelona.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to the show. As you can see, things are back to normal this week. Management had a look at last week's tape and thought that the sight of me ranting away, hair all over the place, unshaven, badly applied makeup would be fine on Sky News, but they expected more professionalism on the ABC. So, wanting to do the right thing, I drove illegally to Sydney to have a haircut, snuck into Queensland for a shave, went to a party with these guys, and while I was up north, I thought, why not pop into Darwin and visit a brothel? Then over to Perth to swim in their water supply, naked, down to Adelaide to visit my ageing parents, and then on to Hobart to donate some blood. Then, because I was feeling a bit sick, I spent the weekend in New Zealand. Back to Melbourne yesterday, where apart from now, I'm spending 2 weeks at home in isolation because that's the responsible thing to do. Because as we keep being told, we're all in this together. And now is not the time to start blaming each other for the fact that we are. And who among us are playing the blame game? Well, I don't want to point any fingers, but those pointing their fingers at Daniel Andrews are largely responsible.
I'll let Daniel Andrews explain what happened on quarantine.
But it's a zero-sum game, the blame game. Josh blames Dan because of the hotels. Dan blames the federal government because they're in charge of aged care. Someone else blames China. China blames a pangolin. The pangolin blames a bat, and so on until eventually there's an old lady who swallowed a horse. So in the show tonight, I'm going to concentrate on the positives. Dull your misery with the opioid of laughter and, like a latter-day Pandora, open my box and release into the world the only remaining plague, hope. Of course, the government is being extraordinarily hopeful that after all this is over, people will be able to transition back into the workforce. This was made very clear by Minister for Employment, Micallef, who does tend to rather over-enunciate.
But there are also going to be a lot of people whose job is no longer there. And so the government's focus has got to be on upskilling and reskilling those people to ensure that they are able to walk into those jobs that are in demand.
Now, the Minister gave a helpful, practical demonstration of exactly how to walk into one of those jobs. Of course, another way of looking at it is while lying on the ground. It's all about perspective. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, Shaun, why are you talking up
the bloody government
like this? We're far more comfortable with you railing against them and exhorting us to take to the streets in protest. Well, that would be irresponsible of me at the moment. I believe
the bloody government
has a right as holders of the ABC purse strings to expect us to be on their side as opposed to being a thorn in it. As we were last week when bloody Andrew Probyn had the unmitigated temerity to ask a question at a press conference outside Parliament House. It was about the Ruby Princess and all those passengers who got off and the official from Border Force who'd misinterpreted their medical forms. Now, our Home Affairs Minister, Peter Dutton, usually good-humoured when it comes to having anything he does questioned by the press, got a bit cross.
Minister Dutton, do you believe that the Border Force officer would have allowed 11 isolated passengers to leave the Ruby Princess if he had properly understood the document?
The suggestion by you that there's been wrongdoing by the Australian Border Force is completely wrong. Now, the Australian Border Force does not have a role in relation to clearing people on health grounds. I'm not going to have them besmirched on a regular basis by anybody. And, well, it is actually because... I'm sorry it is, because in your question, you put that there was wrongdoing and there's not.
Instagram influencer for the Home Affairs Minister, Brian Pegmatite. Did Border Force's misinterpretation, not wrongdoing, of the medical documents lead to the passengers leaving, regardless of whether Border Force had authority to let them leave or not?
Well, it was down to New South Wales Health to stop those people getting off the ship. Border Force doesn't have the power.
Yeah, well, you don't let passengers disembark when they come on boats from Indonesia, do you?
But that's not because they're sick. That's because they've come here illegally.
Well, isn't it illegal to come here with COVID-19?
As long as those passengers didn't have any contraband or held a valid visa, they could be coughing and vomiting and holding up a positive COVID-19 test result, and no Border Force official could stop them.
Well, that's reassuring. Now, before your head explodes, can I ask you about the new cybersecurity strategy announced this week by Mr Dutton? Will it allow your department greater access to domestic computer networks?
Yes.
Is this a government strategy to chip away at our privacy?
There's no such thing.
As a government strategy?
As privacy. What have you got to hide, anyway?
Well, nothing. I just don't want one of your goons trawling through my cyber smalls like some snowdropper.
Yes.
Finally, you must be happy with how the polls are tracking at the present time. Mr Morrison's smashing it. Labor can't seem to lay a glove on him.
Yes.
That must bring a smile to your face. Brian Pegmatite, we'll leave it there before you traumatise any more viewers.
Pleasure. It's a sensation I understand humans experience.
And coming up, elite schools, a monthly expose to make us feel superior to those we think have more money than us.
Are you two smoking over there?
Sorry, Mrs. Rasmussen.
Very much looking forward to that. There's one thing the ABC hates more than Christianity. It's people who are well off, lording it over us by sending their children to school in a blazer. Who do we think they are? Plus, with the Reserve Bank of Australia leaving interest rates on hold for the 6th month in a row, we can only assume that the cash rate is pretty sick of the music. Meanwhile, the government is doing its level best to fight the economic effects of the health crisis, but it must do so with a double-edged sword. Cutting off jobs by ordering some businesses close on the one hand and cutting off the other hand by paying others to stay at home on the other. If that sounds confusing, it's probably because I didn't express it all that well. Let's take the childcare sector, for example. It was free for a while, then it wasn't, then staff went on JobKeeper when they had to close, then they were off JobKeeper because they were opening up again. But now children have to stay at home again in Victoria, but the centres are open for children of essential workers. But that's not enough in fees to keep them open, so the federal government are bailing them out so they can stay open, even though most children can't go because their parents are non-essential workers. In other words, the children who are not allowed to go into care are being paid for by the government, even though they aren't there. So it's free for them so long as they're not attending. And the ones that are allowed to go, whose parents are essential workers, have to pay a gap fee, which is the difference between what the centre is charging and what it receives from the government's childcare subsidy. Now, that's pretty straightforward. But what I can't understand is, surely, given the federal government are bailing out childcare centres because the state government says most children can't go to them, the gap fee can be waived for those who can. I would have thought that's pretty reasonable. You can do that, can't you, Dan Tian?
No, we cannot, by law, compel services to waive the gap fee.
Yeah, but why not? Dan Tian's neurologist, Avery Capable.
Well, we don't want to interfere in the market, Shaun.
What market?
Well, we live in a market economy, and all our laws are geared up so as not to meddle with the primal forces of nature. It would take years of legal action and court hearings and administrative appeals to test the unconscionability or inequity of the legislation involved.
Or you could just change the law.
Oh, we could, yes, we could change the law, but we've suspended Parliament because of the health crisis, so our hands are tied.
Well, why don't you do it by regulation?
Say what now?
Like you did back in July when the Minister announced he'd waive the gap fee if children were not attending childcare for COVID-related reasons.
Well, we can waive the fee if your child can't go to childcare because of the health crisis, but we can't waive it if they have to go because of the health crisis. And if that's inconsistent, call me a monkey's uncle.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Avery Capable.
Oh, thank you. I'll give some of these to my nephew.
Another positive to come from this pandemic is an innovation that's proven quite popular. Telehealth, the distribution of health-related services via telecommunication technologies. Rotunda Panfry from the Department of Health. How did the idea for telehealth come about?
Quite by accident, as it happens, Shaun. I was on the phone to a doctor chatting about some of the frauds that he'd been perpetrating on Medicare when it occurred to me that I was talking to him without being in his room. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I wonder if patients could use telephones to talk to doctors from a long way away without having to attend at their clinic. So we contracted KPMG to look into this for us, and they ran several extensive trials, and their very expensive report back to us was that, yes, indeed, patients who called their doctor's surgeries on the phone from sometimes hundreds of metres away were also able to speak to their doctors without the need for a face-to-face consultation.
So Australia displaying its world-class credentials once again, being at the forefront of a major breakthrough in patient treatment.
Absolutely. In fact, we're now seeing telephones being used for conversations all around the world, so go us.
Yeah, oh dear, we seem to have lost Rotunda there. Bloody NBN. Right now, though, here's Blake from Frydenberg and Morrison with some advice for home buyers or those of you thinking of renovating. Blake.
OK, let's talk about something important for a moment. I'm here from downtown, and I'm here on a mission of mercy, because the bad news is most of you are fired, redundant, on job keeper or job seeker, you're through. The good news is you've got, and all you've got, is a capped, limited time opportunity to build your home or fix it up with someone else's money, starting tonight. Home builder. Taxpayers paid good money for this scheme. Get that money and spend it. You can't spend the money you're given for free. You can't spend shit. You are shit. Hit the bricks you ain't using, pal, and beat it, because you are going out. And if you're a builder, the news is even better, you sons of bitches. P-R-I-C-K. P, price, R, recession, I, incentive, C, cost, K, can't remember what that is. Price, how much are you charging? Recession, there's one on and everybody's fucked. Incentive, 25 grand each and every contract. How much more incentive do you need? And cost, what's your markup? Prick. You got these assholes coming in, you think they came in to get out of the rain? 25 grand, you're a builder. You build it into the quote. Quotes for 100 grand, now it's for 125. It's that simple. The money's there, you pick it up, it's yours. You don't, you're going to be shining my shoes by the time this gravy train derails in September. Bunch of losers sitting around in a bar. Oh yeah, I used to be a home builder. It's a tough racket. Shaun.
Thank you, Blake. And after the break, in the wake of Victoria's lockdown costing the economy $10 to $12 billion, Victorian big business owners have labelled Premier Daniel Andrews' leadership as diabolical. And I'm interrupted by an avatar for big business in the audience.
Shaun, do I interrupt now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, is the hat too much?
No, it looks fine.
I could lose the pipe.
No, it looks good. I like the pipe.
Shaun, if you ask me, the cure's worse than the disease. We should have let this virus run through the population early on.
You're not worried about the loss of life?
I hope this doesn't sound harsh, but a few old crones and codgers dropping off their perch here and there doesn't worry me in the least. They're not exactly productive members of society, are they? I mean, sure, they might contribute to your viewing figures here on the ABC, but they're not paying their fair share of tax revenue, are they?
Are you?
That's beside the point. The fact is, we could have had herd immunity by now.
And at what cost, though?
No, one that I don't have to pay, obviously. It's like I said to Twiggy during the bushfires. We shouldn't be fighting them. We should be letting them burn. I mean, once a tree's burned, it can't burn again, can it?
Well, I suppose not, but there's no tree anymore.
No, good riddance, I say. It was a weak tree.
Yes,
if we keep mollycoddling forests by protecting them, how are they ever going to grow up to be fire-resistant?
Well, what do you think? We've given a platform for someone with an outrageous and offensive point of view. Should we pretend to be appalled like you are, or sign them up for regular appearances? Send your answers to the Today Show, care of wherever it is, etc. And you could win a tub of Carl Stefanovic's Vapor Rub. Get something off your chest by rubbing whatever it is onto it. That's nice.
Sydney, and the aircraft waiting for Mrs. Petrov, wife of the Russian diplomat who sought asylum in Australia. Here she comes. It was indeed a dramatic scene.
Where's the Prime Minister?
Of Australia?
Yes.
He's right there.
Hello, I'm Gough Whitlam, Prime Minister of Australia in 1954.
It's the Petrovs. They want to defect.
The Russians are going to freak out, man. I mean, they really are going to flip their ever-loving wigs over this.
Freedom comes at a cost, Mr. Petrov.
It's a cost we are willing to pay at any price, regardless of expense, Prime Minister.
Na zdarovье.
And one of them, Mrs. Petrov, is never speaking Russian again. In Australia, we say, to Her Majesty. And our glasses go in the sink and not the fireplace.
It's what it is to be an Australian, knowing your place and where you belong.
Stalin will be furious.
Well, may you say God save the Queen, because any boss who shuts anyone for not coming to work today is a bum.
Hold on, Colonel. Yes?
Eddie Mabo has been successful. The land is his.
I'll call you back.
Is this right? It says Darwin was bombed by Sri Lanka. I'm pretty sure it's called Ceylon in 1968.
The reception here is terrible.
The Petrovs have travelled through an atomic bomb plume.
Well, so-called science would have us believe that for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. I mean, that's fine on paper, but in the real world, it's quite possible to have opposition even when there's nothing to oppose. Opposition leader Anthony Albanese would have confounded Sir Isaac Newton, but the reality is he exists and continues to build on the foundations laid down by Bill Shorten and cement Labor's position as preferred opposition party. There are rumblings in Labor's stomachs, though, over the amount of media Shadow Treasurer Jim Chalmers is doing. In fact, if you look at this interview with Jim very carefully, you can see one of Albo's staffers dashing off in the background to tell him that Chalmers is on the TV yet again.
The government needs to be considering what else can be done here.
But it's not just the government who are reaching out a helping hand to those who need it. Mad as Hell is doing its best to support the struggling arts sector in this country with this new Mad as Help program, assisting as best we can theatrical artists who are doing it tough. Wilma Spade Calendar, tell us how great we are.
Yeah, Shaun, no, Mad as Hell's been bloody grouse. Like most of us in the Corp de Ballet at the Aussie Theatre Camp, we've just sort of been hanging around like a fart doing jack all, you know. But getting to come in here and do your news stories for you, no, it's been really helping put food on the table and that.
Do you eat any of it?
God, no. God, if we do, an alarm goes off and someone comes around with a stomach pump.
And what news story are you going to perform for us tonight?
Well, it's an oldie, but one that doesn't seem to want to go away, Shaun. We're doing the eternal story of Angus Taylor and the mystery of the allegedly forged document that said Clover Moore was emitting too much CO2.
Well, good luck, Wilma.
Nah, cheers. Thanks for having me.
OK. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Wilma Spade Calendar with a Pas de No One. Where did those documents come from? Our commentators are Maggie Bathysphere and Big Bad Bastard Brian Plate.
Thanks, Shaun. And Wilma's not wasting any time. She is straight into it as the invisible wood sprite, sneaking into Angus Taylor's parliamentary office in the dead of night to allegedly forge a document. Well, it's a story as old as time itself, hey, Brian?
It seems that way, Mags. Yes, one of those unanswerable questions. Mainly, it must be said, because Angus Taylor himself stubbornly refuses to adequately answer it despite innumerable opportunities.
Sorry to cut you off there, Brian, but Wilma has finished forging the relevant document and is stapling it together to leave it on Angus Taylor's desk for him to send to the papers in the morning.
That's right, Mags, and now here's Angus Taylor coming in from right field. He finds the document and doesn't question its provenance, even when the figures are discovered to be so obviously impossible that a child of 3 would have thought something was up.
And Angus is thereafter cursed to forever fend off questions about who was responsible with what he thinks is his boyish charm, but with what, in fact, is a smug, shit-eating grin. Shaun.
Thank you, Maggie. And later in the show, we talked to someone about recent reports that the Small Business Ombudsman awarded contracts to a firm linked to the Liberal Party and that a $500,000 contract for market research was given to a former Liberal pollster, both without a tender process.
Well, mates helping mates, Shaun. I'd argue there's no more tender a process.
And that's coming up later in Conflicts of Interest. What are you going to do? Also, one of the recurring hotspots for COVID outbreaks has been meat-packing plants. I chat to an abattoir about why.
I've got no idea, mate.
Well, the British Medical Journal suggests transmission is made more likely by the dense production of aerosols combining dust, feathers and faeces that is produced in the plants.
When you say a dense production of aerosols, are you referring to when our social club put on We Will Rock You?
No, I'm talking about health and safety, that you might have been slipping on hygiene standards.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, if we've been slipping on anything, it's probably all the dust, feathers and faeces.
Meanwhile, some in the community are still refusing to wear masks, believing that the threat of the virus is overstated, and mounting arguments like this.
I could fall off a cliff. Like, are we going to ban cliffs?
Member for the National COVID-19 Commission and Professor of Things People Say on the News at the Ponds Institute, Naka Blodshoot. It's a very good point she makes, isn't it?
No, it's not, Shaun.
I'm sorry. I meant it wasn't a very good point, isn't it? Tell us why, for the viewers who might think it is.
Well, the young lady is ignoring the fact that by not wearing a mask, she could spread the virus and kill hundreds of people. If she fell off a cliff, she's not likely to kill hundreds of people doing it.
Well, what if, hypothetically speaking, someone was walking along a cliff top and they had some highly toxic substance in their bloodstream which caused them to suddenly black out and fall off the cliff, and there was some sort of massive rave party for cannibals at the bottom of the cliff and they ate the person and then they were poisoned and died?
Yes, the COVID Commission does like to prepare for every eventuality, but that's not one we've war-gamed, Shaun.
So yet another government oversight there. But looking ahead to the weather now, here's Concretia Doyley.
Thanks, Shaun. Well, if you're travelling to the sun tomorrow, expect large bubbles of super hot plasma with ionised atoms moving up into the photosphere late in the day. A maximum of 9 million degrees with an overnight low of 7.3 million. Shaun?
Thanks, Concretia. Well, the National COVID-19 Commission Advisory Board are not the heroes we deserve or the heroes we need right now, but they, like Batman, are a bunch of people who by day run large corporations, but when the rest of us are in danger, become lawless avengers, giving free rein to their deep-rooted psychological problems, most of which are connected to abandonment issues and being surrounded by enablers. Secrecy is essential to their work. As the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said, their advice is to remain off-limits to the public, things like urging the government to support new gas projects. Now, granted, it's been a while since I've seen a Dark Knight movie, but I don't remember Bruce Wayne furthering his business interests while fighting crime as Batman. The chair of this committee is Nev Power, who, if you coloured him in, looks exactly like Batman. But by day, Nev is director and shareholder of a major gas company. The similarly named, for satirical purposes, Kev Glower, also from the MCCC, does this pass the pub test? And if it does, are people sitting down to order their drinks?
Well, I don't know what the big deal is, Shaun. The task force also has on its roster the CEO of Rolled, but it doesn't mean they're pushing Australia towards a Vietnamese sandwich-based future. They're promoting gas because it makes sense.
Even though another government agency is saying gas isn't needed as renewable energy expands at a lower cost for consumers?
Well, yeah, I didn't say it made sense for the consumer.
Well, doesn't it worry you as a consumer?
No, I don't use gas. Didn't you read the article? Can't compete with cheap renewables.
And it doesn't worry you that the gas industry is facing terminal decline?
All the more reason to strike while the atmosphere is hot. Listen, Shaun, Australia's got gas coming out of its arse. We've got from now to the collapse of civilisation to shift the stock. Plus, because the government collects so little tax on gas, we're also proposing they subsidise it so we can sell way more.
Well, Kev, it's been great talking to you. We've got to go to an ad now, I'm afraid. Would you like to throw to the ad? This is a fun thing. A lot of guests enjoy this.
Which camera?
Look at any camera you want. What about that one, number 5?
One?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, OK. We'll be back soon.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm a free market economist. I find the very notion of a national minimum wage ideologically offensive. I think Australian workers are grossly overpaid by international standards, and if you want to know what wage theft is, just ask any employer still having to pay weekend penalty rates. I want my products to be cheap, not ethical, and I yearn for a world where businesses, not governments, have unfettered power to determine the cost of labour, and that cost is 3/5 of fuck all. Plus, I quite like Jamie Oliver. That's why I pick Woolies.
Sunday night, and an innocent afternoon's fox killing in North Bradfordshire-on-Thames goes horribly wrong when a mysterious strangler comes to town, only to be burnt to death in the local church after murdering 12 prostitutes. That's Janzoon and Crumpet, Sunday at 8:39.
Well, time now, though, for us to...
Don't sit under the pattern tree with anyone else but me.
Ian Orbspider, Junior Lecturer in Pedantics at Box Hill TAFE, joins us now, and he's written a book of tedious facts that you could find on the internet that we can't plug because of the ABC's no advertising policy. Now, Professor Ian listened to Treasurer Josh Frydenberg's simile about Australia's impending debt.
We can see the mountain ahead and Australia begins the climb.
Well, firstly, Professor Shaun, and I don't wish to be pedantic, but that's a metaphor.
Well, there's no need to infer I don't know my grammar.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm implying it. And secondly, yes, a mountain is an odd image to suggest the absence of something, in this case, money. A mountain works for a surplus, but perhaps a chasm would have been better for our $184 billion national debt. We can see the chasm up ahead, and Australia needs to jump it with its motorbike.
Yes, and a motorbike being?
Lowered expectations and diminished prospects.
OK. Alternatively, we could just fill the chasm in.
Oh, yes. We can see a chasm up ahead, and Australia needs to fill it in with the earth left over from our continuing resources boom, presumably with equipment we'd need to hire from Gina Reinhardt and Twiggy Forrest.
So China, which on one reading caused the problem because someone over there ate a bat...
Racist.
Will also get us out of our hole by providing the money to fill it in, yin and yang.
Also racist. Harmony and balance is restored. We pay off our debt, expand our economy, grow our wages, pay off our mortgages, get our tax cuts, reduce our expenditure, lower our welfare payments, and get back to how this country was at the beginning of the year.
On fire.
Thanks to arsonists, Greenie caused excessive fuel loads, and, of course, lightning strikes.
Well, thank you very much, Professor. Well, not coming up because Rosehaven is on in a minute. Nero hits a 7-iron while Rome burns. Woman doesn't find elbow hot. And stick to racing, you talentless show pony. And finally, let us take comfort from our Health Minister's description of our AUSMAT personnel.
They are the SAS of the medical world.
Although there are a couple of differences. AUSMAT use the Red Cross insignia when they're performing their duties rather than the Confederate or Nazi flags. Plus, they don't kick you off cliffs or summarily execute you if they get you mixed up with somebody else. Goodbye.
Giant baby.